Hello, my name is Callie Hagemeister, and this is my GPC final project. I could have predicted many of the lessons that I would learn through my service abroad, but some of the lessons that I learned surprised me and ended up impacting me the most. These lessons are pieces of advice that I wish someone had imparted on me before I even stepped in the airport. My experience over the past few years has taught me cultural competency and how to adequately help or serve others. 2 years ago, I studied abroad in Guatemala for 2 months through an NC State social work trip. During that time, I lived with a family of 5, ate every meal with them, and worked 2 jobs. One of my jobs was making tortillas and preparing soup for 70 elderly Mayan women who could no longer support themselves. The other job was working at a preschool, teaching English to kids and helping out with planning group activities. Throughout this time, I learned about Guatemala's devastating history of oppression and natural disaster, got to try many tasty Guatemalan dishes, and my Spanish improved tremendously. I created memories and bonds with my host family and friends that I met there that will last forever. The problem with this experience begins with everyone praising me back home. They called me a saint and said I was surely helping these people so much. Even at the time, I felt weird about saying that I was helping. I made mediocre tortillas, much slower than the other workers, and the preschool really didn't need me. So I began to analyze my work there, research voluntourism, and draw on class lessons to help me break down and eventually learn a vital lesson. A lesson on how to be a good volunteer and how to be a guest in a foreign country. In my cultural anthropology class, I learned about ethnocentrism and applied that to service learning. Ethnocentrism, the belief that one's culture is greater than others, contributes to the attitude that Americans are better, can help others better, and that others need to change to reach our cultural standards. The reality is that we lack skills for these settings because we are not natives. A huge part of the market in Guatemala thrives from embroidering, weaving, beadwork, and making tortillas, all of which most Americans don't know how to do. To go and help them do these things that they have been demonstrating their expertise in for centuries is, to say the least, a waste of time and resources. It is deleterious to send U.S. Americans who harbor this attitude to help others. It is imperative to assess how we give aid and analyze whether or not it is effective. In my experience, my trip was beneficial to me, but from a service perspective, it was ineffective. This leads me to the next lesson I learned in my other classes. In some of my social work classes, I learned the difference between helping and serving, the main goal of social work. Helping is based on inequality. It's a relationship between someone who is in a position of helping and someone who needs help. This can ruin people's self-esteem and self-efficacy. Serving, on the other hand, is a relationship between equals and is a process of mutual healing and respect. When one believes that they are going to a country to help people, it is a dangerous frame of mind to be in, and as a result, no service can be accomplished. In my World Populations and Food Prospects class, I learned about the difference between aid and development. Aid being a short-term solution to a sudden problem, and development being a long-lasting impact on a community. I have witnessed and learned a few examples of poorly done aid work during my years at State. The first time was when I went on an NC State diversity trip to New Orleans for a few days. We helped a man restore his house, which was still under construction since Hurricane Katrina hit, and he spoke to us about how a lot of financial aid was thrusted at the community in the first couple months, but that the aid was spent by a corrupt government, and none of it was spent on rebuilding the community through development. This financial aid could have been used towards building up the community, and if properly planned, could have become a developmental project, allowing the community to have been completely rebuilt by now. When I was in Guatemala, the renowned Tom's shoes were delivered to the preschool that I was working at. I was so excited that I had actually witnessed a Tom's shoes delivery. But when I began to think about it, only the wealthiest families in town could afford preschool. Many children didn't have shoes in this town, but these children had shoes, stylish clothes, and a pricey education. I began to question the benefit of the aid and who it was delivered to. Additionally, the shoes ended up wearing through within a month. I learned just how important it is to properly distribute aid and thoroughly study the community that you are trying to give aid to. Also, I learned how much more beneficial developmental projects are. The point I'm trying to make is that not to expect to go to a country for a few weeks and do developmental work. It takes years of commitment, planning, and a whole community effort. I went in believing that in 2 months I could make a difference in my community, and as noble as my dreams were, this is really just unrealistic and unfeasible. Knowing the difference between aid and development has helped me know which one is appropriate, how to plan for each type of service, and how, in the long run, developmental work is more effective and necessary for lasting change. Contrary to this slipshod aid work, are organizations in Guatemala that are doing a tremendous job in development work, such as the nonprofit in my town called Pueblo a Pueblo, which provides scholarships for children to attend school, mentoring school children, nutrition education programs, and starting community gardens. In my time in Guatemala, it was clear to see which programs were beneficial and why, reiterating the difference between short-term aid and long-term development work. So as I was working in Guatemala, I asked myself this next critical question. Was the work I was doing in Guatemala long-lasting, and did it leave locals feeling empowered? Unfortunately, my answer was no. It was hardly aid, and it surely wasn't development. This is a hard reality for me to face, because I simply want to help others, but in order to do so, we really need to examine the effects of voluntourism more closely, and study how to properly, effectively serve others. This experience has taught me so many lessons that I will carry throughout my life. I would love to live abroad in the future and work for a nonprofit that does really good development work, led by local peoples that will have a long-lasting positive effect on the community. Although my experience abroad did not change Guatemala for the better, it definitely changed me for the better. I'm a better person, social worker, and activist because of this experience. After analyzing the work I did after I returned to the U.S., I encourage students who choose to do study abroad or service abroad to take a critical look at their impact, and hopefully we can change the way we help or serve in the future.